Welcome to a playthrough of Atlantic Chase. I will be doing solo rules here, and we're actually going to start with the first solitaire scenario called BL1, and that stands for the Blockade series. There's 3 of them in that. This is the Raiders of the North Atlantic, September 1939. This is going to be the early stages of the war as German ships try to slip through to the Atlantic before the blockades really start kicking in. First off, this is going to be a short video because I'm just going to kind of do some introductory material to the solo system, as it were. And with that in mind, I can pull this up here. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. I'm just going to highlight some important stuff. Let me start with the solitaire terminology, because I think that it's important. Scenario instructions will often invoke a term or phrase in red, such as nearest TF, nearest task force. These phrases facilitate judgment calls during play. Just keep in mind that you will have to make judgment calls while playing solitaire. They allow the imaginary opponent to make reasonable moves. In some cases, if the phrase "if possible" appears, that means you should adhere to the instructions as best you can, but may violate them if necessary, but do so as little as possible. Okay, now I know this bothers some people, a few people. They want to see solitaire mechanics that will do absolutely everything, so that the player is completely out of the picture. And I don't know what to tell you. If you're looking, I think you end up being disappointed here with the solo system in that case. Me, I don't have a problem. I don't think very many people have a problem with it. As like I said, I'm an old school Avalon Hill bookcase war gamer. I lived on a farm with kind of remote, and I'd had these games, and I'd just play them solitaire, and I'd move them, and then move myself, and then just kind of make the best moves from there. I think a lot of people play it like that, because what we're after is so much, at least in my case, was interacting with history in an interesting way other than just reading a book. Although they feed each other. Like, I'll play a game and I'll be like, wow, I'd like to read more about this. And then I read about it, it says, ooh, are there any games about that? And, the cycle continues. But so I actually appreciate a solo system like this where it's going to take some of the stuff to give you some kind of a challenge without, completely turning it into what I think would end up being a procedural headache if it just did absolutely everything. Oh, you got to go to this hex. Okay, which hex are you going to go to next? That would drive me crazy, but to each his own. I think it's a very solid system. I'm only going to go over a couple things. I mean, when you look at things like Bring to Battle, it's going to ask you to, do common sense things you wouldn't need a bot to really tell you that this is what the AI should be doing. So like, try to generate as little intel as possible. If you see a station hex over here and you're bringing a British trajectory over to this German one, but you're trying to get somewhere else, you're just going to go around it. You're not going to generate intel by going through it, and things like that. The other thing, the one that might confuse a little people, is unidentified. In some cases, the imaginary player will operate with an empty TF, or task force. That is, it won't have ships in its task force. They have yet to be identified. Unless instructed otherwise, the task force remains empty but operates normally. However, one key is that its speed is very slow, even though it may ultimately have fast ships on it. And identifying a task force is basically, it's going to be hidden knowledge from the player until there's a move that absolutely requires, and that's the way I'm interpreting when it's time to identify the task force, is anytime you absolutely have to know what's in the task force to continue. Like going into battle, obviously, but other things, like if something you needed to calculate the speed of the task force for various reasons, then you'd have to go to identify it. And let me find the page here. So what happens is you'll have a task force with nothing in it, and then when it comes time to identify it, you'll roll on it, a d6, And you get something like a battle cruiser, a heavy cruiser, and a light cruiser, which is in these early scenarios, if you're the German, it's gonna, that's gonna crush you. Or it could be something like just a few destroyers, in which case, yeah, take them on. But you don't know, and that's the point, and that's what keeps you on your toes, I think. So that's an unidentified part. That's the one part I wanted to highlight. Now for these blockade scenarios, there's one rule that I missed, and I just spaced out on, and that's called the prize rules. In these scenarios, when a convoy's task force is brought to battle, i.e. an engage action, and there's no other ships in its task force, do not fight the battle. That is, do not transfer ships to the battle board. Instead, automatically, the convoy is destroyed. Actually, it is captured and sent to a German port, and the contact marker attached to the active task force just as though it fought the battle. And so on. That's the rule I was missing. I was playing this first scenario a couple times just to get the swing of it, and I'd bring the British to a battle, and I'd fight the battle with the convoy, and the convoy would slip away, and I was like, darn it. Well, then I went back and read this rule. It says all I had to do was bring him to battle, and he was automatically captured. And I was like, wow, this scenario is hard. I can't catch these convoys. Well, yeah, that's part of it. I was making it harder than it needed to be. Okay. All that in thing here, we'll just, I'll also go over, before we get started, go over the actual scenario. Raiders of the North Atlantic. Go ahead and let's get into the flavor here. September 1939. Grand Admiral Raider intends to interfere with British merchant traffic in the Atlantic. Before it was declared, ships were already sent beyond the North Sea to take up position. That's these rendezvous markers here. And there's one up the corner I haven't got in the screen. And has now ordered raiders to slip through the developing blockade to harass Britain's supply lines. The objective, score hits on British convoys. Under no circumstances, however, are you to lose a German vessel. Your ships may complete in Wilhelmshaven, I think. Okay. Kiel or Murmansk. Rendezvous may change your objectives. Okay, we start out good. I am the German, and I will have the initiative, I believe. We have 2 convoys on the British, one going from Africa to Portsmouth, another coming from Halifax to Clyde, Liverpool. Over here, the French are still in play at this time. So, we have Strasbourg, Dunkirk battlecruisers, and it told me to randomly pick a light cruiser. And since I have bayonets and tomahawks waiting in the wings, there's no way I couldn't pick Montcalm, of course. So, the objective, I already did the objective. Okay, we got the setup. I have 3 rendezvous markers. And you might say, well, that's not, here's the French right here with the brown. And so it's that task force and these 2 convoys. You're like, well, that's not so bad. Well, not so fast. Now I'm going to show you a little bit how the solo system works here. Here's our British action table. Oh, that's one thing I did want to cover, is that, this is an important distinction, right here under the solo action tables. We're going to roll on that table, and a very important note down here is unless noted otherwise, if the imaginary player retains initiative after the action, roll again on the action table. So I think when I was playing very early, I think I'd roll an action and then I would pass. And I was like, no, he's still got the initiative. He can do more stuff. So just roll for another action on this chart here. Now we're going to start with this one up here. And if a convoy either makes it into port or gets destroyed, we go to this 1 column. If 1 goes, and if 2, it goes to this one. So basically, the bot is going to change up its strategies as the situation changes. So that we're going to have a lot of airstrikes, and oh boy, are these airstrikes really killers. I've been adjusting my play for the Germans to avoid these things because they're real killers. Blockade, and here's where I talked about, gee, that doesn't look like many task force on here. Blockade is basically going to create task force with 3 cruisers in it. So there's that. And then there's another action over here. Where is that? Hold on one second. Yeah, decisive action. That is going to bring unidentified task force into play. So you can see, and they're going to be charging right at you when they come in. So it's going to get hairy pretty quickly. Take a look at the victory points here. I don't know if you can see that or not. Get in there, get in the shot. Destroyed British convoys, none, you'll lose a victory point. 1, you'll get 3 points. 2, you'll get 6. 2 or more, you'll get 6. Each completed British convoy will reduce it by your victory points by 2. Each German ship that gets sunk will be -5 to me. So you can, and damaged will be -3. So you can see I can get in the hole pretty fast. One or more German task forces complete in South America. Okay, I'll talk about that in a second. That's 3 points. And if you're able to damage bigger ships other than convoys, wow, you don't get many points for that, do you? Okay, so this is going to be dodgy. Okay. Now, when things get hairy and I decide these ships can't go anymore, I can make a run for one of these rendezvous points. There's a 3rd one up there. And when you are stationed in there and you still have the initiative, you're going to roll on a fueling check. And fueling checks can do various things. One will give you a new order, one to complete to South America. It'll repair a hit on your ship, but this is an important point. It will not change a damaged ship into a non-damaged ship. So if you flip the token over, this is not going to let you flip it back. It's just going to take hit markers off, as far as I can tell from the rule. I think I asked that on the forums. I think everyone agreed that that's how it's meant to work. So to give you, your mission will change if you decide you can't get these convoys anymore. And it will. These aren't the only 2 convoys. Once these, if the bot will ask itself, okay, are any convoys on the board? No. Let's make another one. So they will keep coming. Okay, anything else I need to know? Yes, in my tutorials, I have a bunch of tutorial videos on there if you want to check those out. Somebody made the comment here, and it's a good one, and I never really brought it up. But let me get some guys here. Let's say this task force was like this, and I decided to pass and do time-lapse. I have in a really bad habit of just taking them from the tail end and just going, so it's a fast fleet. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's the last one I picked up, so task force there. You don't have to do that, so no, I think that's a different one I had. Okay. When you go, you have to think about that. When you pull up your things, you can make the station in any of the one. If you know you're going to be, you can pick any at any time. So you can go there, there. And that's important. That's an important tactical decision. It says, do I want to be right on the on this trajectory, or are these enemies coming after me? Do I want to be kind of far away so I can make a run for it? That was right there. This is a random placement. You can place it adjacent to any of the rendezvous points. I'm going to start there because I think that's a decent start last time I played. And I think that's it for preliminary notes. And next video, we're going to jump right into it. So thanks for watching.